fairly successfully for a while. We had a fellow who died, our junior warden, who'd served for several years. At his funeral, he had a huge family, 8 brothers and sisters. They're scattered all over the country, kids, grandkids, great-grandkids. They couldn't all fly in. And so we streamed it. We had 250 screens active during his funeral on our feed, as well as 120 people in the church. So we realized then that it was going to be a valuable tool for us to reach out to them, as well as our snowbirds. We have people who go up north in the wintertime. In the summertime, they like our church better than their northern churches sometimes. And so there's a way for us to continue to connect to them. We still have most of our snowbirds are watching our services online rather than watching the services in their own churches there. So there's some real advantage to this. With Facebook now, we have the ability to go Facebook Live, which opens the door for massive amounts of potential viewers because there's just so many people on Facebook. Granted, it's only about 25% of the population that's seeing it, but of the population of people using computers, people on Facebook is about 80% of the people who use computers have Facebook. So there's a tremendous number of people that are available to you, and particularly most of them aren't going to church. They're just like our neighborhoods. On any given Sunday, if you try to add up all the people that could be in church and compare it to the population of your city, you're going to be surprised if you have 15% of your population in a church on Easter, let alone a regular Sunday. So most of the people aren't church. Most of the people need God. They need this love of God that we have to share with them. And so we have great opportunities for evangelism in this moment. I kind of think that the COVID thing is one of God's ways. God uses all things for good. And I believe he's used this pandemic as a way for us to get serious about how we can reach the lost who are closed up in their homes and have nowhere else to turn and do that. Now, granted, when you produce something and it goes up on Facebook, you are competing with everything. You're competing with feature films, Netflix, everything else in the world. But what you do have that none of them have is a personal relationship with your faith community. So let's say, for example, Becky's cousin is going to be on Dancing with the Stars. I can guarantee you Becky would have 100 people jammed into her house to watch it. So the same thing happens to us when we say, we're bringing church into your houses for you and we want you to be part of it. And so that's the key thing that we offer by doing online worship. And it's something that we need to continue even if everything goes back to normal. Because we're reaching people that have never done this before. And so now the issue becomes, how do we sustain 2 streams of worship, an active and vibrant virtual church, if you want to call it that, and conventional contemporary church or a traditional church where people come and worship. So that's the big wrestling match that we fight with as far as how we make this happen. So one of the things that you need to be aware of is where the biggest issue that I see in every church video I have seen from everywhere is where people put the camera. That is the biggest single problem. And so, you know, my wife said, you know, you asked them, you know, why did you put the camera? Why is the camera where it is in your church? You know, why did you select it that way? Why did you put it where it is? And if you have any ideas as to why that might be? Okay.
We have one on the side that does a pan shot, so we can see, like, we go into the congregation just a little bit for the gospel. And that way you have a sense of being able to see the congregation, but it makes the church look gigantic. Right. And then we have another camera from the back that zooms into the altar. And the process has a few people's heads, but that's because of the back of the church, and it's a good place to put the camera. Eventually we're going to mount it to the back wall.
Okay. Yes, I'm going to go over here. I've got Dale.
Hi. We were limited in where we could put our cameras because we needed the internet connection. We would have had to spend an extra $6,000 to get the camera, the second camera, in the position where we wanted in the left transept. So we put the 2 cameras in the back, and then one of them is angled more towards the choir, etc. So it was a cost issue, as well as just the ability to safely get somebody up high to install it.
Right. Any others? Let's see here. Yeah, Becky.
So I read somewhere that it was good to place your camera at an angle so that it seemed like you were getting the same view as you would if you were actually in the congregation.
Mm-hmm.
So we placed our camera in the front pew, basically.
Right.
And we have 4 sections. We're a semicircular church. So we did it in our central section that people usually sit in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw yours. Yeah. For most people, in most church people, and Episcopalians in particular, we don't want some ugly camera sitting in the middle of our sanctuary. That tends to be the general feeling. And so right now, since a lot of us are meeting with very limited crowds or no crowds at all, we have an opportunity to treat it a little differently, and that is put the camera where the camera needs to be. And one of the things that that most people who are there see a camera, and they will see that as an intrusion on their worship. What they don't realize or accept is that this camera is 100, 500, maybe 1,000 people watching. It is the most important. If you think about where we seat people at funerals and weddings, where do we put them? We put them in the front pew. We don't put them in the back chair or in the balcony above everything else. And then we say, well, we'll give you a big zoom lens. So basically, we're taking our parishioners, the ones we love the most, who can't get to church, and we're saying, sit in the back in the back room, and here's some binoculars to help you follow. And that doesn't feel welcomely or intimate at all. And the only way you can create that kind of intimacy is to actually get the camera closer to the individuals who are doing it. Now, one of the problems that we face is how do you do that without offending the 8 people or 10 people that are there? Well, there's one thing that I have learned about being an Episcopalian that I really love, and that is we have vergers. And before we had a verger, I always had trouble because stuff would need to be done in the sanctuary, in the middle of a worship service, and I didn't feel right jumping from behind the altar and fixing something and then running back. It just looked jackleg. So I have a verger who keeps his eye on that. Well, if the verger is vested and something's not right, he can walk anywhere in the sanctuary and nobody bats an eye. If you're vested, you look like you're part of the altar party. So one of the things that we're doing is if you're operating a camera in a service where people are present, you vest the camera operator and they stand with the camera, they put it in position and set it where it's supposed to be, then they sit in the nearest seat. And when it's time to go to the next shot, they stand up, walk over there, and they carry it over to the next place. You know, we carry things around as we go around. So, say for example, the camera, if you were going to shoot with just one camera, say you had a phone and a monopod and maybe a stabilizer to keep it steady so it's not flopping all around. There's a good microphone on the camera, but you got to be close. So let's say you start at the beginning of the service and you set this up in the back of the church where you see the whole back of the church, see the grandeur of the building, all the familiar things and all that. Well, once you've seen it, you're done with it. If you've ever watched a movie, that wide establishing shot is up for 4 or 5 seconds. And then the rest of the movie is close-ups, tight shots, nothing below the waist. They're all tight shots, except for a transition where you're changing from one scene to another. So yeah, you can go to the wide shot as you switch between the gospel reading and the sermon or between the Eucharist, but for the most part, people are craving the closeness and the intimacy of that. And so one of the things that's really key on that is they're in their homes, they're not in the sanctuary. So if you're showing a wide shot on a TV set in a home, it appears to them to be a fisheye lens looking out through the door to see who's outside the front of the building. It's not intimate, it's not close. And close means move the camera within 6 feet of whoever is speaking at the time. And that makes a huge difference on what things look like. And trust me, I have worked through this over the last couple of months. If you go back and look at what we did 3 months ago, when I first looked at our Mevo shot, I said, I think I'm a voyeur on a security camera checking out what's going on inside this church. I don't feel like I'm part of it. I feel like I'm just peeking in through the transom windows. And I thought, we're missing an opportunity here. The other thing is people are used to seeing close-ups on television. They're used to seeing your face up full. These people that are going viral with their selfie movies, their face fills the whole screen. That's what we need to do in worship services. So we need to be able to move the cameras around freely and comfortably and not feel guilty if we have to stand in front of someone, because you are actually carrying with you hundreds of participants that will be active in the church. So the other thing, and that's the biggest thing you can do. If you just move your camera position so you're closer on everything, that's fine. And don't be afraid to move the camera. It's not a problem. Move cameras all the time. So let's say, for example, you have it in the middle of the aisle, and at the beginning the church begins, the people walk in, you're set up, the priest comes forward, he's going to do the opening sentence. So you just walk down the center of the aisle, you get 6 feet away from you, park the camera there, have a seat on the edge seat. You can reserve a seat for the camera operator there if you think that's going to be an issue. So he knows he has a place that he can duck out. You sit down, blessed be God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the collect for purity, please be seated for the readings. Then you take the camera and you walk over to the lectern. You set it down in front of the lectern and you have a seat. Then they do the readings, they lead the psalm, they do the other. Okay, it's time for the gospel. Oh, cool, pick it up. Let's process out with the gospel into the middle of the church and see all of the images. They read the gospel, they finish the gospel, he turns around, then you're going to walk up and you're going to go park it in front of the pulpit, not in the back of the church zoomed in. A couple of things happen. When you zoom in long ways on a telephoto lens, everything gets very, very flat. You don't have any curve to your face. You look like a flat piece of paper rather than a human being. So if you get closer, you start to see that. You can see it on your faces now. You're all close to cameras. You can see the curves in your face. If you're in the back of the church, it's totally flat and it doesn't look interesting. So get close to them, have a seat, let them preach. Now, some of these, this DJI stabilizers that I've been using has a tracking feature. So if your preacher likes to walk around a little bit, you can put the tracking on at that point and it'll follow him from side to side as you're seated. It's going to take some practice. You'll have to figure out how to do this, but you'll do that. So then we get to so what comes next? Okay, so then he finishes the sermon. Okay, we're going to do the creed. Everybody stands up. So whoever leads the creed, you do that. Prayers to the people. Oh, let's walk over to the deacon and have the camera next to the deacon. So as the deacon does the responsive prayer, they look down at their liturgy and then they memorize the first line. They look up and say it to the camera. And then while they're responding, they look down. Oh, there's the next line, I'm ready. You look up and give it. You go back and forth. So you create this intimate contact with the viewer that you just don't see in a wide shot. After the prayers of the people, we're going to do a couple of announcements. So walk over, he talks about what's going on. Then you say, okay, we're going to do, and then, okay, so the choir's going to do an anthem. Okay, fine. Let's walk the camera over to the choir. Get a shot of them. Move the camera slowly as they're singing. Track around, move around. You've seen these music videos. Don't go crazy. Don't go doing swish pants. This is church. We don't want to jar them. We want them to do it. But don't be afraid. I can't remember who I saw who had a trumpeter. Was it one of you who had a trumpet player? I wanted to see him so bad. He was sensational. And it just run through that. It sounded so cool. It was a trumpet with a hymn organ, and it was so spiritual. It was magnificent. I had chills. But I wanted to see it. She introduced him, said, oh, by the way, here's our trumpeter. And then he went away. But imagine what that would have looked like if you could have seen him playing as you heard that. I mean, it starts to become emotional. Church is emotional for people. And if you don't let the emotion in, they don't feel the connection. And part of that has to do with us making an opportunity for them to get there. We have to bring it into their houses. We have to bring it onto their phones. So it's okay if you do that. And when you're done, just walk back over. We have silence. Another thing you want to be careful of is don't start your recording until you're ready. If you have your mic on, don't start rolling and you go pick up your mic and then you go stay there and check the lights and wander around the church. Don't do it until you're ready to go. When everything's ready, then hit the red button and then start streaming live. That's going to be a key thing. And when you're finished, hit stop right away. Put up another screen, say you're invited to do this, do a post or something like that. But don't continue to do that. Okay, so next comes communion, right? So what do you do for communion? you park the camera 2 feet in front of the altar, where when they break the bread, you can see the little chips of bread fall onto the paten below. You want that closeness. They've been craving this forever. They don't get to go inside the communion rail. You're going to bring them inside the communion rail for a Eucharist that's going to be so intimate, it's going to knock their socks off. They're going to want that so bad that when they come back to church, they're going to be lined up so they can have it because they saw it. They saw it better than they could ever see it in a regular Eucharistic service. These close-up moves on cameras change everything about what they see. The same thing, I use an iPhone 11 that has a couple of cameras on it. And so when we shoot the sermon, I shoot it with 2 cameras. So there's a close-up and a wide shot. And it has a single track of audio. So I cut back and forth between the close-up and the wide shot depending upon what I'm saying. Okay, so I'm telling a story, so it's a wide shot. From the point of the story, it goes to a close-up. So switching back and forth between camera angles on a long sermon is way better than doing the other. Now, okay, you may not have multiple cameras. You may not be able to do that. Maybe not posting. But if he says something important, you know, move in. It's okay. And if he starts to do, then back it up a little. You can do that. It's okay to move your cameras in the service as long as you do it gently. Right now, we're doing the spiritual communion. We have the special prayer that we say. So we break the bread. It's on the table. So take the camera and point it down at the elements and then read the prayer and go from there. Bring it back up, post-communion prayer. Go back, hear the sermon at the end. It looks different. And all the way through, it's moving. It's not boring. It becomes very active. So I'm going to pause for a second and get reactions about what you think about that. Anybody?
Father Rob, I'm sorry, I joined in late. Were
Yeah.
you talking about with in-person? Are you talking about having somebody with the handheld, or are you talking about?
I'm talking about
if-
in-person worship with people, that you would have a person in your congregation who would man the camera, that would be vested in a cassock or an alb, depending upon your tradition, and they would stand behind the camera and they would move it around the sanctuary and follow it around. This is a way to do a single camera, high quality, intimate worship service and capture it without having to do multiple cameras, without having to do multiple streams. This is a really simple, easy way to make your church services more dynamic on a shoestring. A monopod costs about $75, a good one. The stabilizer is $150. If you already have a camera, you're all set. That's all you need.
And are you talking about, are you thinking of live streaming, or are you talking about for recording and editing later, or both?
I'm talking about this would be for live streaming. If you're going to record and edit and you want to do that, then there's a little bit different treatment. What are you doing? You single or, well, just do this. Raise your hands if you're doing single cameras. Okay, there's a few. Okay, how many of you are doing multiple cameras? Okay. Okay, so that's the single camera story. So let's talk about the multiple camera story as well. Where you put your multiple cameras is just as critical. And part of that is where do you put your cameras so that you get the most effective use of the images. Once again, if it's in the back of the church, they're going to see the inside of the church for the whole time, but they really need to see people. So don't be afraid to put your cameras where they need to be. So don't be afraid if you have a small camera parked in front of the altar. Right now, if you have live people in there, the cameras will be in position. They'll be fixed positions. You don't need to have camera operators if you're switching between them. Put it on a monopod. They're black. They're small. Mount the camera on top. Get the frame set. When you're ready to go, you're ready to go. Walk away from it, and you can cut between them. There's an app called Switcher Studio, which I don't know if you're familiar with or not. It allows you to connect up to 9 iOS devices. You have to be on Apple stuff to do this. Switcher Studio. You can connect up to 9 phones or iPads to it and switch between them live and feed directly to Facebook on it. There's a monthly fee to use it. You get a 3-month trial if you're a nonprofit for $30 a month, and it's $40 a month after that. So if you're doing multiple cameras, that is the best way that I know of to effectively do a multi-camera switch shoot on a low budget and still get significantly high quality. A lot of people already are inheriting other gear that people bought before them, and they're trying to figure out how to use it and how to utilize what we have. Some people have restrictions, like Dale was talking about, well, they couldn't really get a Wi-Fi signal to the camera, so they had to hang it on the back of the wall, and that's it. Well, I think in these times we can make some adjustments, and that may be accomplished by running a cable next to the edge of the pews, taping it down with carpet tape that matches the carpet that's already there. There's ways that, you know, putting a rug over a cable as across as a walkway. For these times, I think that's important to figure out how we do that. The advantage of using the switcher stream is that everything's wireless. So you can put your cameras anywhere you want. You don't have to connect anything up. So you could take a phone and set it in front of the altar. And in fact, you can even put a cover on the phone that's the proper liturgical color. So you can have it green for this season, and when Advent comes up, put a blue back on the back of the phone so that they'll be the right liturgical colors as we move through it. And if you just stick these up in different places, there's wall mounts for phones. There's all kinds of ways that you can hang them up in different places. And then when you're done, you just pop them off, stick them on chargers. Now, how do you get your hands on a bunch of phones to make this work? It's really pretty simple. You just do an appeal to everybody in your church that says, are you upgrading? Are you considering upgrading? Don't trade your phone in for $100. Donate it to the church and we'll use it for worship. I talked to one person about it, and they gave me 2 iPhones on the spot. They had them in their drawer. They just hadn't traded them in. So there's a way that we can actually get equipment from our community. And just think how cool that would be if you were a member of the church and they were using your camera to stream worship live. They would feel an intimacy and an ownership of that movement. So just another.
Do the donated phones, I mean, do you have to have accounts for them, or as long as it's like an iPhone 7 or above, you don't
need a line. You don't need a phone. You just need the guts. You just need the camera and the Wi-Fi. So it doesn't have to have a line attached. My wife wanted I wanted a new phone. I had a 10R and I wanted an 11 Pro Max. And so I figured I'd upgrade my wife to the 10R when I got the other one. Well, she liked her old 6 because she likes the home button. So she wasn't willing to move away. Yeah, there you go. And so I have a 10R that's not being used. It doesn't have a phone line attached to it. So that's what I'm shooting with. So I'm using a 10R and 11 Pro to shoot our services with. And it's extraordinary. Are any of you editing?
I'm still using a 4S. So.
Oh, there you go. There you go. You probably have somebody, you know, I talked to, if you have a good relationship with your folks, you might even say, look, we'd like to use your camera on Sunday. Would you be willing to let us use it? And then you just put it in airplane mode, you know, hook the Wi-Fi up and take it from them and put it on a clip that you put somewhere in the church and then sync them up. You know, get here early, we'll sync up your phone, we'll use it on Sunday worship. You could borrow them and take them back. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities with some of this new tech that's going to make it very, very different. The other thing is with little phones, you can put them all over the place. I mean, you can do a shot from behind the altar where you see the congregation. One of the favorite shots we have is a shot that I have from behind the altar when the choir performs, where you see the big lighthouse stained glass window in the back of the church that you never see on a normal Sunday because you're looking the other way. Yes, somebody waved. Who waved? Was it Dale? Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention that if you're borrowing someone's iPhone, you can airdrop the video from whichever phone you've borrowed over to whoever's phone is doing the editing. That once I figured that out, it saved me a lot of time and aggravation.
I use AirDrop every week for my phones. That's how I put stuff over onto my machine. But I'm finding that it's a little clunky. Now, are any of you shooting and editing? Okay, if you're
not for the service, but for other stuff. Yeah.
Okay, if you're shooting or editing, I need to make you aware of a couple of apps that are just will absolutely change your life. It's called Filmic Pro, F-I-L-M-I-C Pro. And what it is an app that takes any iPhone. They make it for Android too, but I understand it doesn't work as well on the Androids as it does on the iPhones. It takes your iPhone and completely unlocks it for cinematic camera purposes. It makes it function like a motion picture camera. It goes to ultra high definition 4K instantly, which you cannot access on a regular phone. It also records directly onto your phone, or it will record to your, it can save to your photos on your iPad, so you can just, it'll automatically load them up into that, and then you can look at them that way. You can also AirDrop with them. It has control over aperture, it has control over white balance, it has control over every possible parameter that you want to have on a professional film camera. Steven Soderbergh, who's a really big-time Hollywood director, he's done lots and lots of films. He produced Men in Black. I mean, for crying out loud, he's done everything. A few years ago, he used an iPhone 7 to shoot a whole feature film because he liked the way the color on the video looked for the theme of the movie. So he shot the whole movie on it, and it aired on Netflix. And then he did another one on an iPhone 8 where he had to have a more conventional video on it. So he uses this app called Filmic Pro, which opened up the camera to be able to shoot a movie that you could actually play on a big screen, like a motion picture screen. You want to go down to the old Epic Theater for your service and play it back for everybody there in 4K. You could actually do that from your phone. So it's way more quality than you need, but it allows you to do something really important in editing, and that means you can crop and reposition the picture without losing quality. Because sometimes you just have something. I mean, to get the frame shot up perfectly last week, I had this shot of the choir from the backside. Well, because we're videotaping, the choir director had shorts on, and the cassock didn't cover it, so I had bare legs and sneakers underneath the cassock. It was hilarious, make a great outtake. But I was able to reposition and then put a lower third banner that had the lyrics of the hymns up on there, so it covered it up. So you don't see it in the broadcast, but it allows you to do some repositioning, things like that, that are really kind of important. You know, you get the whole thing done and you say, oh my gosh, there's a light stand over here in the corner I don't want to see. And so you can cheat that up. Yeah, exactly. So if I really recommend it highly. Now, Filmic has a second app that's part of it, which is called Double Take. And Double Take allows you, if you have an iPhone 11 or higher, you can use 2 cameras at the same time and record them simultaneously. So you kind of get a wide shot and a close-up at the same time from the same camera and the same point of view. So you can cut back and forth between 2 camera angles off of one phone. It's pretty remarkable. It works really well. The other one that they have is, I have big fat fingers, and so it's hard for me sometimes to work on phones because the little buttons are too tiny. They have a thing called a remote app, which allows you to connect an iPad to a phone, and you can control the phone from your iPad as you're recording. So you can say roll, record, check the focus, check the white balance. You can do it on an iPad without having to climb under it. And it's turned out to be really important for us because I've gone to using a teleprompter, sorry priests, a teleprompter, I said it out loud, for preaching and for liturgy. Because it allows me to make 100% eye contact with the viewer at home rather than me looking down at the altar book for the text. And it becomes more intimate. When you say the words of consecration and you hold the bread up in front of you and broken for you and you're staring right at them, something happens in those moments that you just can't get any other way, which is why we memorize those parts so that when we get to those parts of the service, we're looking up and not down at the altar book. But it allows you to make every single word count in the liturgy that you can't do otherwise. I found a little tiny $200 teleprompter that works on an iPad. The iPad sits on the front. It follows your voice, so it automatically advances as you're going along. If you're too far away, you have to connect a microphone up to your iPad to do it. But the B side is it records that audio on your iPad, so you can upload that and you go to edit if you want as well. So I become a firm believer in using teleprompters in church, believe it or not. Now, they can't see it, and I have no idea what that's going to be like when I have people back in church, but I can't imagine that. The big problem there is, at least there's eye contact. One of the things that you'll see a lot of times when people who are using multiple cameras is the ear shot. That's this shot where they're talking this way, and you can check out the earwax. And I don't like those very much personally. I don't think they connect with me. They kind of make me feel like they're turning their head on me, turning away from me. So I'm all for, if you're using multiple cameras on a single subject, keep the cameras as close to as possible when you shoot an interview when I was doing interviews, shooting, celebrities and stuff like that, I would always put the camera as close over my shoulder as I could when I was interviewing them. And that way they'd look at me, but they were just slightly off center. And if you watch 60 Minutes or any of these other interviews, they always do them that way. So if you want to have some intimacy with a second camera, make sure you don't go very far off axis. The side shot just looks like they're turning away from you. That's personal. I know some people disagree, but something to think about. Okay, I'm going to catch my breath. Who else has questions? Come on.
I just wanted to mention, you mentioned last week, you mentioned Sling Studio, and we do use that.
That's right. And I love Sling Studio. I thought that was really cool. It's great if you have the budget for it. But still, the key on Sling Studio, even so, is a matter of getting the cameras down in front of the people.
Yeah.
The switching and the technology is great. That's fine. But if you are still up in the balcony, I mean, you think about the African Methodist Episcopal tradition where blacks were relegated to the balconies in the churches. They weren't allowed down front, and then they finally left so they could start their own church where they didn't have to be in the balcony. And so if that's where we put our guests, that's not the right place to do it. It sends the wrong message on a lot of different levels.
I like the idea of maybe putting them one up on the altar. That would kind of be cool. Like having
it is cool.
You
Yeah.
have a camera that zooms in, but that is kind of a cool,
It's very cool.
this situation.
Now you're in Oviedo, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if and I know that chapel real well from Cursillo's and other things like that. I've been there a lot. So if I were going to shoot that, you had the reader's desk over on the side. I would put a reader's desk, a camera about 3 feet in front of the reader's desk, and here's the other thing. Because your furniture is set up the way it is for worship doesn't mean it has to stay that way if you're shooting video. You're allowed to move the furniture. And this is really key for you to understand, because if you frame it up where you think it needs to be and you look behind it and there's a cracked plaster in the wall behind you, don't do that. Take the pulpit, move it, take something, move it to the side. Because if you're close to the subject and you're focused on their face, the background, if it's far away, will get blurry. It'll get softer. It won't jump out. And that way, the background can be something interesting, like maybe a blurred stained glass window or something like that. In the context of watching it at home, they don't really care. What they see is an element of the church that's familiar to them in that scene as well, and that can become really helpful. There is a warning if you're using stained glass windows, because if you use stained glass windows, they're going to blow out your camera because they'll often be way too bright. So one of the things that we have learned recently is that we have east-facing stained glass windows. If we shoot our services in the afternoon, they're not so bright. They actually read okay. But if I shoot them in the morning when the actual service takes place, they're going to be blown out. Now, if you're live and you have an east-facing, tough, you're stuck with it. But there are other elements of your church that are interesting that you can shoot. You can turn it off to the edge, other furniture, other items like that. So don't be afraid to do that. Our pulpit, I love the fact that I'm in a church that was built in the 1800s every week, and that every bishop in Florida has preached from that pulpit. There's a tradition there that is extraordinary. But the truth of the matter is that right behind that is some very old paneling that was put up in the 1960s, and it doesn't look very nice, and it's water stained, and there's wires that go along the edge because there's no wiring, because there wasn't wiring built when the church was built. So it looked terrible on the shot. So instead, I moved out of the pulpit and I go down in front of the altar to preach, so that the background is the altar behind it and blurred. So where you preach from is not tied to your existing traditions for this purpose. For this purpose, you need to go where it's going to look the best.
Any recommendations for somebody like me who is the AV person and the priest?
Oh, I wish I had a good one. I think that looking forward, particularly as we're going into stewardship season and we're beginning to look at budgets for 2021, that you should give serious consideration to a staff person, part-time staff person who is skilled in this arena. And you could certainly look at people who have video production skills in your community. Open it up on, go on Facebook Marketplace, go on jobs, start Craigslist, whatever you need to do. Start searching out who might be capable of doing it. I really like the idea of bringing an unchurched person who really understands this in to do it, because then there's a chance to share the gospel and they might actually get it. And I've seen that happen again and again and again. So I encourage you to explore those avenues. If you're in Orlando, you have Full Sail down there. So there's a big school with a lot of kids who are studying. So that's an opportunity to troll for people there as well. There are television stations, there are news people. There's lots of people. If you're in Orlando, you're fine. Becky, you're kind of out in the boonies, kind of like we are. There's not much out here, unless you have a camera aimed at rocket takeoffs, you don't have much experience in video in Mar Market, This is kind of how it goes. But there are people out there, and there's some really good ones. There's some really bad ones too. If you need help vetting somebody, send it to me. I'll be happy to help you. Just you can text me or message me personally. I'm happy to do this. This has really turned into be something that I think is really important for us as a church and as a diocese to move forward in. And so I'm kind of all in on this. Yes, Dale.
I would also encourage you, Becky, to recruit volunteers, just because if you tried to get people to help you a month ago, try again. We have a team of 6 now on our communications committee, and we've done a ton of stuff between social media, video, podcasts. We're doing all kinds of things. But even if your first attempts to recruit volunteers from your congregation didn't work, try again. And, none of us knew anything about video, recording or anything, but the tools out there are so easy that, people can figure it out. It's not hard. And if you're motivated, you just watch what other churches are doing. And if you do get some volunteers, just have them get in touch with us at St. George and we'll try to help.
Yeah. Becky, one of the other, hang on one second, Bob. I want to speak to this and I'll grab you, Bob. Getting the tech so it's sustainable is probably the most important thing you can do. That you should be able to get it set up and then be able to take your hands off and give it to somebody else. I kind of like having my hands on because I did it for so long and I get a hit off of it. It's a rush for me to be able to do it. But figuring out how to do that. When we started doing our Mevo a couple of years ago, we have a couple that comes to our church. Both of them are mentally handicapped. And she was switching all of our services, his wife was. Because once it's set up, all they had to do was take an iPad, turn it on, hit it, and then just tap on who was talking on the screen. And it was over, slide the red button off, and it was done. So if the easier you can make it, the more accessible you can make it, fine. You're going to need somebody to make sure that you can fix it if it doesn't work right. But the idea of being able to hand it off to people in the pews, and these iPad-driven switching systems, I mean, you can hand it to anybody in the congregation, they don't feel good. I can't do this. Well, just hand it to the wife. Let her do it. I mean, there's things that you can do that will actually engage people in it. And, and there's going to be young people say, oh, I want to do that. Then it starts to be a cool thing to do. I want to be an usher. I want to be a limb. I want to be the video guy, So, you can create some interest in it as well. Bob.
I was going to say getting people to do the camera was fairly easy. I have 3 people that do cameras and 3 people that are doing sound, and I coordinate the whole thing. I do remember a couple months back when St. Peter's had our second service had the COVID and nobody could come. That is, I wasn't allowed to be there on Sunday. I remotely ran everything, and I got the wife of the sound guy just to aim the camera. And I gave her a 10-minute lesson on where to point the camera, And she did a great job. It was very easy for her to do it, and the service turned out quite well. Now, we have one camera in the back that's a high-end Canon XF100 that really does a nice job. And when you get up close, you could fill the entire frame with whoever you're trying to look at. So it's a very high zoom. But that's what we've been using, and we're moving forward. Brian and I had some discussions I'm working toward. I've been talking about doing it for a month now, moving to a 4-camera or 5-camera sound. I like what you said about putting the camera on the altar. We could put a GoPro, or because we have a few of those, on the altar and face it back and use that. But we do everything through the soundboard. We have a 64-channel board of 3232, and everything's done that way. And we have one mix that's for the camera, and one mix for the house, and one mix for the crying room. So, but yeah, getting people to do it and them being consistent. I have the same person on the 1st and 3rd Sunday of the month that does one of the cameras, and another guy that does it on the 2nd and the 4th. And I usually end up doing the 5th Sunday. So it's not rocket science to aim the camera.
Right. Now the other thing is if you can get your cameras in close, the decisions are pretty simple. There's only one place that's really going to look good. And if you get your cameras in close, you can set them up and pretty much walk away from them. So you could have one person do a lock off on all those cameras. The other thing is that the high angles look tough. I know that I looked at Holy Trinities, and they do all of their stuff with a big lens camera from the top of it, from the balcony. But most of the shot is floor. When you get up high, you see a lot of floor. You don't see faces, and that's always distracting because it gives you that voyeur effect, so the viewer doesn't see it. So even if you do get close, you look like one of those caricatures of people that they use on websites where they have the wide shot and their feet are this big and their head is this big. And so they start to look that way. So, anything you can do to get your cameras down to the same level is helpful too.
Ours isn't up very high, and we can't go up any higher because then the lights that are hanging down in the church will get in the way.
Yeah, I would say get lower rather than higher in almost every case.
Well, I kept having people say, you need to get it up higher so that we can put more people. We're averaging 35 people in parishioners at the church for the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
And so as a result, I have certain chairs reserved so I don't have heads in my shot.
Right. So this is a great opportunity. You say, I know you want to be here. I want to be here. So I'm going to move the camera up here in the middle of the congregation. That's a good time to do it. Because if you can get the camera up forward and not married to the backs of the churches, everything will change. And believe me, once they see it at home, you'll get text messages. Oh, it looks so much better. I don't know what you did, but this is great. I have to share with you. I have to share with you a note I got this morning from it, just so that you get an idea of what this is like. Hi, Father Rob. Just wanted to let you know, Pete and I watch online church every Sunday and love it. When we all return, I do not know if I will wear anything but a nightgown. Take care and stay safe. So, there's something going on there that people are still connecting with us in amazing ways like that too. Yeah.
You also realize there's lots of people all over the country and the world. We have 4 or 5 people that watch from Sri Lanka, 5 or 6 views coming from London, Jamaica. We get a lot because we had a funeral that we streamed was it last month, and we had 10, 15 people watching from Jamaica and a bunch of New Yorks as well. So it's probably 1/5 of our viewing is coming from other places in the world.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I have somebody from Nigeria coming in now. It's pretty interesting.
So your comment at the beginning about what this has done, having gotten the pandemic, it's caused people all over the world to be watching these services.
Right.
So
exactly.
We're getting the gospel out there.
That's good. That's good. Hey, there's Jeremy. The rector's here. How you doing?
He finally showed up.
That's okay. That's great. Yes, Brian, you have a question? Anybody have a question waving your hands?
No, I'm sorry. I was waving at Jeremy saying hello and hi, Bob. How you doing?
There you go. That's good.
Hi, Brian.
That's good.
Seth,
Oh, my hand. Audio, I saw that you use Vimeo, but do you usually use the audio through the system?
Okay, audio. This is a really key thing. And I'm going to do something different this week because I've been so frustrated with the quality of audio. I have a little 4-channel Mackie mixer. And I have a Zoom 4-channel digital recorder. And I'm going to run our mics through that and then sync that up to video this week and see if I can't get it working better. I have a couple of wireless microphones. They are, with the Countryman headset, and they're Sennheisers. They're really nice microphones. And we'll use those for the readers and that. But since we don't have to project to the whole house, I'd rather not have something hanging off my head. I'd rather it look like I'm just talking to them. When we shoot movies or television, we hide the microphones. That's a key part of it. But when you're in a service, those microphones, the over-the-ear microphones, are great because the level stays the same whether you turn your head, you look up, you look down, or if you have a lavalier, you get loud when you pray here, and when you look up the sky, you can't hear anything. So they're practical for worship in a public setting, but for television setting, they're not so great. They don't look good. They don't, what's that hanging on your face the whole time? So, I'm kind of a mind of that. The microphones and the cameras are really good. If you get a mic, if you put a little camera on that also has an audio capability, your recording off of those is going to be fine for post-production if you're going to edit with it. But I think that's the key. The boomy sound that you get with this echoey thing from using your camera can basically be completely eliminated by getting the camera close to the speaker. Just get it right up close to them. And a case like Bob's, where he's got microphones attached to cameras that are connected to a board and to the audio system. I mean, he can actually call that mic up that's in front of the pulpit or whatever, and use that sound source as well.
I just put mine on right now that we use. That
Thank you.
Talking about,
Yeah.
and I feel it had a little foam thingy over it. It looked like I had something on my face. I hated it, so I refused to wear it. But it's not too bad.
It's not too bad. And to be honest, if your camera's up in the balcony and you're looking at a wide shot, you can't see it. But what I'm calling
even at a close-up, you can barely see it on ours, because it's the same color as his skin.
Right.
The problem is when he wears his mask with that, it doesn't sound real good. So he doesn't wear his mask.
Right. Well, we record without masks because there's nobody else in the room.
Yeah. Well, let me clarify. I wear my mask when I need to, when it's appropriate.
Right. Good.
I'm not wearing it the whole time, though.
Well, I didn't say, I wasn't intending intentionally he didn't wear it at all. He just doesn't wear it when he's talking.
Right.
Well, I'm mainly teasing you, Bob, but also clarifying for everybody else.
Yeah, that's fine. Brian, you had a question.
I was just, as far as audio usage and that sort of thing, what I'm using right now is on our priest and our deacon, they've got the Countryman, the wireless headsets, and I'm using Sennheiser. I'm sorry, those aren't Sennheisers. But those are, I can't recall the name, but I got one of those on each of them because they're the primary speakers.
Right.
And then what I've got following that, or as backup or reinforcement for that, is on my Canon that I have sitting at the very back. I've got a shotgun on there, a roadie shotgun on that. And then all the way up near the front, I've got another little mini roadie. And all of those are just going into a little 4-channel board.
Right.
And so I just take that mix and plug it in. And so between those 4, it does pretty well. We're going to be switching to adding lay readers, in which point I'll have to figure out what to do about adding additional. But I really like the idea of having the principal people with, as like you were saying, Rob, right up close. Right. So that way we're catching them without all the ambient in the background.
Particularly if you're doing a live stream. If you're doing a live stream, you got to be able to switch back and forth. You don't have time to reset in between. Yeah, I agree. The other thing is if you don't, you know, you have your house sound system and then you have a separate feed for this, and that's really kind of important because if you have it mixed for house, it's not going to sound right for television, because a lot of that extra sound, that extra ambience that creates the fullness on your house system, you need to filter it out, because when you run it through a TV speaker, it sounds terrible. It just sounds like distortion. And so having a separate feed. So, you know, an aux out on the board sometimes is a better way to go, so that you can control a separate mix. That's what Bob's been doing. You clean that out.
We're lucky that our board has 16 mix outs. And so we use one of those for that. And the other 8 of them are used for our ear system. So,
right. Yeah. Yeah, it's all magical. The problem with having a 32 channel board is, of course, you have to have somebody who can run it. And that becomes the other issue. You know, who's tech savvy enough to be able to do that.
Well,
so
I've trained 4 guys so far, and
yeah,
they do a pretty good job.
Yep. Yeah, there you go. Pretty good job.
Jeremy doesn't complain to them very often.
That's good. That's good. So we talked about audio, we talked about video, talked about single camera. I don't think there's anything else you might want to touch on.
Switching software.
Switching software.
Hardware.
Yeah. If you can afford Sling, I think it's good. If you can't afford Sling, I think Switcher Studio is the best option right now.
But that's for an Apple, you said. Or
right.
will it work on Android?
No, it will not. It uses Apple's operating system to make it go. There is Sling. If you're on Android, you got to go Sling. That's what you got to do. That will work on them. And that'll let you cable as well. Now, there is another one that's available that uses webcams. So you can actually set webcams up all over your church and feed it through, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's in the notes from the last conference. But the problem with webcams is most of them are wide angle. I mean, you're all looking at me on webcams now, and you're basically less than 3 feet away from your camera, and this is what you see. But I want you to keep in mind one thing. The image size that you see now on your webcam is pretty much the image size that you want to see your lectionary at. This is when somebody's reading to you, you want to be able to do that. The other thing, I should talk briefly about words, how you get words on the screen. I've seen some videos where the projection screens are in the video. And the problem is that they do not shoot well. And they just look faded out and washed, and you can't really see what they are. So that's always, I'd be cautious of that. One of the things we do is we publish a PDF of the full service bulletin so that they can download it onto their phone and watch it on TV or on their iPad. They can follow along just as if they were in church. The other thing is that some people can't do that. So we're doing lower thirds on all of the liturgy and all the lyrics, all the words of all the hymns. I don't do lower thirds on the sermon, but I have a hard copy of the sermon that they can download as well. That's really helpful. Now, there is an option that I have not used, which is closed captioning on Facebook, that you can click that box when you stream live or when you upload live, and it will provide closed captioning for you.
We had a problem with that on YouTube more than Facebook. The translation became obscene.
Yeah.
We had to turn it off.
I'm not happy with YouTube. I watched the National Cathedral's Eucharist a couple weeks ago, and there was an insurance commercial on between the Episcopal and the Gospel. So you just can't, you have no control over what they're going to do. When we finished our service a couple weeks ago, I did it once. I went to YouTube with it, and the service ended, and there was a couple in bed talking about their one-night stand and what they were going to do about it. And you just can't do that. You don't have control over that on YouTube. Yeah.
I saw your video on Pentecost. You use Vimeo? Is that why you use Vimeo?
I use Vimeo because I've used Vimeo for years as a professional. Vimeo has been the professional platform for using video for features and commercials and production companies for years. They decided they weren't going to be YouTube. They were going to be a platform to actually share high quality video. And you can actually roll 4K into Vimeo if you want to look at it. You can download it and look at it. So if you're working on a feature and you want to share dailies with people, they use Vimeo. That's the platform that's used. The other thing is I have a producer's account which is a $15 a month thing that I got through my Mevo. That means that no commercials will ever run in any of our stuff. And when your video runs to the end, you decide what the end screen is going to look like. It can be a call to action, like with a button for, I'd like to submit a prayer. It opens an email link and you can type in a prayer that goes to me, to my email account, or a link to the website, or it can stack previous services videos. You can click on those and watch those. And then when you're done, you're done. So there's no linking on to anything else. It keeps it really clean, and their analytics are sensational. They will tell you exactly when people left the service if you want to spend the money to get the upgrades. And the analytics are going to be critical, because as we start to move into this, and our parishioners are saying, well, you want this money for this, you want to hire this person, where's this coming from? Well, we've got this many people watching. You can actually link it to donation buttons as well too. So I think that that's one of the things to really kind of keep an eye on. Yeah, Bob.
I just wanted to say we've been using Boxcast now since almost the beginning of the year. And we had, Father Jeremy had a friend of his from back when he was teaching that was down in South Florida. They had been using Boxcast for a number of years, and they recommended that. So that's what we started using. And so far, we've been pretty happy with it. They do have the ability to give money to it. There are a lot of features that we're currently not using of it that we will eventually use. But we've been happy with Boxcast. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all.
I've seen it on a couple of the church signs in my neighborhood, you know, Sunday service on Boxcast. I didn't know what it was, but yeah.
It's nice because it allows us to embed a player right in our own website.
Yeah, well, I use Wix for our website. Yeah. So it embeds. You can embed any player into a Wix website.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, so it's so we embed it, and then also we push it out to YouTube and Facebook simultaneously.
Yeah, yeah.
So when we stream, they're all going.
Yeah, we can do that too. The other thing is briefly on websites. We redid the website, so when you land on our homepage, the video is at the top of the screen. That's the first thing you see, and it's up all week. So I leave the Sunday service up all week long so people can continue to do it. We're seeing traffic on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays now. People who didn't get on Sunday, or they're having a bad day and they just need, well, I need to go to church. Well, you need to go to church, you can go to church. In fact, we did banners on the outside of the church that have two people in front of a screen with our church in the screen. It says Sunday church anytime, and our web address, stgabriels.church. So that's another way to promote it. I think it's helpful to do that. Everything we do drives the traffic to the website. That's our tag on everything that we're doing, because it's now branded as Church at Home. That's what we are, St. Gabriel's Church at Home. And then what that looks like, and it's like how we do morning prayer, how we do compline, how we do Bible studies, and all the links are right on the front. But that splash page, that landing page, is just all about church on Sunday.
Father Rob, we had one question that has been answered in the chat, but you might be able to elaborate a little bit to define when you were talking about the lower third of the screen.
Okay.
What is lower third? Why would you leave that open?
Lower third is like right down here at the bottom where you see a banner across the top that has the type. I use a program called Canva to do all the graphics. And it allows me to create these lower third banners, and I just type the text in. I do the text in white, and I do the responses in yellow, so it's easy for them to know when they're supposed to talk and when they're not supposed to talk at home. The one thing I love about Canva is the backgrounds are easily interchangeable week by week. And so I change the backgrounds of the lower thirds to tie in with the theme of the service that week. I also do a full 1080 single graphic that's the title page for our service. That's the theme that you want to do for that week. So, you know, it might be, well, I think this one, it's got a guy kind of scratching his head saying, I'm okay following Jesus, but do I really have to carry a cross? You know, so that's kind of the theme. What does that mean? And so the lower third banner this week has little question marks that are kind of, so that theme kind of carries through the whole service. So there's full screen graphics as well as lower thirds. If we're doing a long prayer, it's full screen. If it's not, so it cuts back and forth. And by the way, if you're using Switcher Studio, you can roll in PowerPoint straight to it, and you can cut back and forth between full screen and lower third graphics on that program as well. And if you've got Sling, of course, you can do the same thing too. Now, if you are doing single camera, We'll call those the video bandits, just going in there and doing the best you can. Guerrilla television, I think it's called. In that case, it's really hard to do the lower thirds. You're kind of locked into what you can do with titles. One of the things we did to help people connect was when we were 3 weeks into the pandemic, we sent a Book of Common Prayer to every household in our congregation, so they had one. So we can call page numbers in morning prayer and know that they have a book nearby that they can grab it. So creative ideas are aplenty. I want to hear from you guys. Let me know, send a text message to me when you've tried something, you find something that works. I need to find out, like Bob sent me something on Boxcast, I think you called it. Can you send me something on that? I like seeing this stuff. If any of you have questions, send me a text message. I'll be happy to do it. I just had a long conversation with Porter Taylor, the new rector over at St. David's by the Sea this morning on the drive-in. He's very excited about what they're getting ready to do. You know, a lot of people are adding stuff together, trying to figure out how we do that. And so we can learn from each other. I'm finding new stuff every single week, how I can make it work better, and changes every single week. And it's going to continue to do that. And I think that's the key thing. Whatever you did last week, do better this week. And then next week, do better. And as long as you keep that momentum going, we'll be able to pull this off. Yeah, Bob, you had a question.
Well, Brian did.
Oh, Brian? Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, Rob, I was just wondering, last month, someone who was in on the meeting had mentioned ManyCam, which is the system that I'm using, the switching system. Yeah. I was just curious if you've gotten any more feedback or heard anything from other people, and are they moving away from it, keeping it, anything like that?
That's a Holy Presence up in DeLand. They're a very small church, don't have a lot of resources, so for them, whatever, you know, it's kind of scrambling to do the best they can. AnyCam is the system that allows you to plug in as many webcams into it as you want, and then stream directly through this open source upload service. I can't remember the name of it.
Well, you can from ManyCam you can actually stream. It's got its own RTMP system in it.
There's a few of them out there, yeah. But the problem with that is you're limited to webcams, and webcams are, well, you know, I've had a 4K webcam back ordered for 4 months for myself. So they're just not out.
Actually, they're not limited. You can do IPs, you can do phones, you can do webcams, all kinds of sources now.
Yeah.
I don't know. Now the free version may limit you to just that. We actually purchased the paid one, so I can do 24 presets, and I think there's 8 or 10 different types of video sources.
Wow.
Well, that would be powerful. What is the monthly cost for ManyCam?
We got away from monthly. It was a one-time purchase. I believe it was $140, I think. 140, 180 bucks. And like I said, that gives you 24 presets. So you can have 24 individual video sources. You can overlay graphics. It's got its own built-in lower thirds that slide in and out. The audio part of it is not as robust as, say, OBS as far as that goes. But I was trying to go for uncomplicated in the hopes of developing and getting more people in our congregation, so it makes it easier for somebody else to sit down and do the switching. I go in on Saturdays and spend, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours setting up all the lower thirds and getting it all production ready, and then I just leave my computer there. So, you know, if I get a flat tire or my car blows up,
right,
at some point someone will be able to sit down in the chair and switch it and run it.
Right. That's key. Would you send me something on that?
Yeah, I sure will. You bet. I'll do it for some screenshots, and then I thought today's meeting was actually on the 30th, Rob, and I was going to send you a link to our last Sunday's video.
Okay.
I'll still do that, and you can see the different ways that I'm using it with our 4 camera.
Okay, good. If you want to see any of ours, just go to our website. It's St. Gabriel's Church, STGABRIELS.church, and you can see what we're doing. And you'll see, we're going to go shoot this afternoon and see what goes on Sunday. So this is crunch time for us. I have found that doing 2 services at one time, shooting 2 services, is helpful because it cuts down on contact, particularly for choir and other people. And then also gives me a lighter week the second week, because then I just have to edit. So that opens me up for, pastoral calls and emails and all the other stuff that I need to do and become more available.
So nobody's coming, no parishioners are showing up at the church, Rob?
No, not at this point. So that's why I shoot out a sequence and edit. So
Okay.
the choir comes together, we record all the music in one pass, and then we stop, and then we record the second service, all the music in one pass. And then we don't have to repeat the Gloria, we don't have to repeat the Sanctus, because we use the one from the week before. I do the whole liturgy in one pass, and then I go up and I do pickups with a different collect, the different pieces, the announcement of what the hymn numbers are, because they're different. And then I drop those in post-production the following week.
So in all those recordings, you're using a teleprompter?
I'm using the teleprompter for all of the liturgy and for the sermon as well, because I'm a manuscript preacher, so I need the paper. I'm not
Very good.
I need the words. I'm weak and being spontaneous. So I do that. I found a couple of really good prompts. I bought the first one, which was $100, but the problem was, if you put the little the iPhone in there on the wide enough angle, you could see the prompter around the edges. So you really have to use it when you can bring it really close, because that's the only way it works. So I had to get a bigger one. So if you're thinking about a prompter, don't buy the tiny one. Go ahead and get the bigger one. You'll be glad you did. It's the same width as an iPad, and the iPad just tracks the script. You have to format the script for it, so you don't block it into paragraphs in bold and that, because it's basically plain text. So we use the symbol for prompters is an asterisk is a pause. So you just type the thing all run together and you put an asterisk. Or if you put something in parentheses, as collect here or that. So you do that, and you just talk and you just read off the prompter.
Alert from calendar.
Oops, stop this.
Shoot proper 17 and 8.
Okay, telling me I'm supposed to go shoot in 15 minutes. I'm glad.
We're at 1:15, and there may be some other people. There've already been a couple of people that have to drop off.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that all of you guys know this was recorded. I'm also going to save the links that I put in the chat, and I'll send all of you a link to the video as well as the resource links that were placed in the chat. And I put Father Rob's email address and his phone number. He's been gracious enough to open up communication that if you guys have questions, he's glad to help you.
You can call me, email me, text me. It all works.
Thank you guys for attending, and please email me if there are any additional training sessions you'd like to be a part of. We are planning a social media training that would be similar to this. And I'd love to hear about any other training sessions that you guys need.
Yeah.
Oh, the social media sounds like a fantastic idea.
Okay, good. Yep.
Yeah,
Thank you, Wendy.
we could really, we've been experimenting. In fact, Marianne DeSantis has worked a lot with me on our social media, but we're kind of just trying things and not sure if we're going the right direction, but we're certainly getting a lot more activity.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just like Father Rob said, as long as you're open to learning and improving, and social media is all about engaging with your audience. And if you keep in mind that this is an audience that is very possibly in addition to the people that are already in your church, you're gonna possibly reach a wider audience, and consequently that opens up the door for you to share the Lord with them, people that may never darken the door of your church, but they may interact with you on social media. So
one of the most effective things we can do on social media is to do little short video promos, and shoot them in portrait, not landscape. Turn the phone up like you would, get nice and close, stand inside the church and do little short snippets. A tease, driving people to watch your service on live stream is the most effective thing to do. And it's just basically, what are you going to talk about? Why does it matter? How will it benefit the person who's watching this? Rather than just announcing it, give them a reason to tune in, a reason to watch. And that really makes a whole, yeah.
Yeah, we followed your advice on that.
Yeah.
And I've done 2 of those.
Good.
Promoting an outdoor Eucharist that's safe and socially distanced.
Right.
Gone from about 10 attendees to over 40 now.
Wow.
And it was not just that one video, but
Sure.
I can use it over again. And then we also used it to encourage people to come back to our 8 a.m. Sunday service, because our church is open. And it's worked beautifully. I've got a ton more hits on a short 1-minute video than any of the other stuff I've done. So it's great.
Right. Yeah, that's all it takes. And they can even be 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, Bob.
Rob, I was going to say, Father Jeremy's been doing this since last year, does one that is actually sent out with the email that goes to the parishioners.
Right.
It's a video that's 4 to 5 minutes long, talking about upcoming events, what the sermon's going to be about, and it really is beautiful. He has done a great job, and we have a media person that's been editing that each week. Jeremy should say something about it, but it is very good.
That sounds great. One of the things to do is do a 30-second tease for the 5-minute video, and then put the link up on there where you can get to it. Because what you have on social media is people who's had the thing going down the line. If you have something on there that grabs their attention in the first 3 seconds, they'll watch it through. They may click. If they click, then they would see the 5-minute video. But this is a little different. I did news teases. In other words, I never did the news. I had to write the little pieces, those annoying things that air all day long that say, this is going to be on at 6 o'clock and you really need to see it because of this and this and this, without ever actually telling you what it was. And that's the kind of thing that really works well to drive people to wherever you want to. So if you do a quick tease like that, like, you're not going to believe what I just found out. But I read something in Ephesians that I'd never seen before, and it rocked me. And it can rock you too, so tune in and see. And so click here to find out more. And just little things like that, if we can learn to tease like they do on television, all the traffic on television is driven by short teases, those promos. They give away 1/3 of the advertising potential revenue to do teases to drive people through to other shows and other broadcasts. So if we can't see that that works for them, then we're missing something. So don't be afraid to do a teasy thing. Teasy things are good.
Well, we want to respect your time, Father Rob. Thank
Oh, yes,
you.
I have to go.
Yeah, you got to go do what you've just taught everybody else to do. Thank you guys for joining us. I'll be sending you an email with the links, and please be sure to let us know if there's any additional training that you guys would like. Have a great day. Enjoy your week.
Nice to see you all. God bless.
Thank you, Father Rob.